Hi folks! Olivia here with a very serious message for any of you or for anybody you know who you've ever caught saying that the government doesn't matter, or more specifically that the federal government doesn't matter. That's just nuts. I hope that I'm going to be able to help clarify for you in this video exactly why the federal government matters, why it's so important, and how if you're only going to go vote once this year in the next couple years, please, please, please make it this one. The reason that a lot of people find what the federal government does a little bit more abstract and difficult to see why it matters is because they deal with the programs that are national, that affect us all, and a lot of them are invisible. They handle national defense, and they handle foreign affairs, and a lot of transport. But that's just how the division of power worked. We were created through confederation, which means that the federal government has different responsibilities than the provinces do. You'd be much more familiar with a lot of the things that the provinces do since they manage the education system and health care. Municipalities, of course, are the ones that deal with a lot of the stuff that touches your everyday life. Garbage disposal, they do community centers and programming. But just because the federal government isn't the one to legislate and has direct power over it does not mean that they do not have an influence over how those things are run. In fact, I think they're hugely important because they're the ones who largely bankroll it. When we look at revenue sources in Canada, that's the money that the government is able to collect in order to spend on stuff. The federal government is able to collect income taxes and corporate taxes, and they collect all of your social security payments and consumption taxes. So those are GST and HST. They collect all of that. When you compare that to what the municipalities are able to collect, usually just fees or tickets, and then the property taxes, it's a huge difference between who has the power of resources to spend. So you can kind of think of the federal government as a bank for the provinces and the municipalities. They have the power to decide how much the provinces are going to get to spend on their different programming. So even if you don't think that the jurisdictions that the federal government has is super important, at least the fact that they have the power to allocate that much resources definitely is. Just because I think that there's a lot of misconception about what the federal government actually does, I pulled up a list of each of the departments and went through and picked out one example of something that you might be surprised that the federal government's responsible for. The rest of this is just going to be me tirading through the departments. So if you already understand that the federal government's important, feel free to tune out. But if you don't, stick with me, okay? We're going to run through this. The federal government is responsible for food safety standards and the celebration of Canada's 150th anniversary in 2017. They're responsible for how many refugees come to Canada and how we treat them once they're here. The federal government is responsible for protecting the environment, though it shares that responsibility, but they're the ones who make sure that we have clean lakes and beaches and forests and parks to go to in the summertime. They get to decide how much tax you pay. They're the ones who are going to decide whether or not someone will finally do something about the fisheries in Canada. My family's from Cape Breton. That one's a sore spot for me. What else? Canada's relationship with any other country in the world. China, USA, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, you name it. They're the ones who get to manage that. They're the ones who are responsible for how much of your prescriptions you're going to pay out of pocket and how much Social Security is going to be there for when you're older. They deal with the Canada Pension Plan, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, and the Old Age Security. They're the ones who are going to have to figure out how to build a positive, healthy relationship with Indigenous people in Canada after the fallout of the residential school legacy. They are the ones who set the rules for running and operating businesses. They literally deal with the most powerful court in the country, the Supreme Court. It is the final point of appeal for any case in the country. The CRA, where you submit your taxes, is part of national revenue, and then they deal with natural resources. We all know somebody who's worked in the oil sands, and it's been a difficult time because the federal government is largely the ones who are able to incentivize different sectors in Canada. Let's see, what else are they up to? Public safety manages crime prevention and the federal penitentiary system. Public works are the ones responsible for getting government the things that they need to do their job, and that includes the material that we're sending our troops overseas in. F-35 scandal, anybody? Yes. Have you ever been annoyed by carry-on regulations at the airport? That's Transport Canada responsible for it. Internal auditors are the people who are supposed to be making sure that the government runs effectively and efficiently, that we're getting bang for our buck, and they report to Treasury Board. Veterans Affairs, I don't even think I need to start on how important that is. And Western economic diversification tried to make sure that the entire Western economy didn't depend on high oil prices. So that's just a list of a handful of things off the top of my head that the federal government does. If you need more examples, let me know. Happy to talk about it. Saying that government doesn't matter is not an excuse. If you're too lazy to get to the polls, that's a whole other thing. But saying that government does not matter is not an excuse to go vote. Anyways, I hope this message finds you well. Hope that you learned something new, and let me know if you need anything. With warmth. Bye, guys.